All right, if you've got your Bibles with you this morning, or you got a Bible app, or a neighbor with a Bible or something, ask them to turn to Jeremiah chapter 12. That's going to be our text jumping off point, kind of starting this morning. We're also going to be in Daniel for just a little bit, and I tell you, just a couple things. If you're wondering what we got going on right here with all this, is that we are auditioning for about a 50-person choir that we're going to have. I'm kidding. That was a bad joke. No, this is for our preschool graduation. So this is going to be full of little cherubs and little angels, all graduating from our preschool. So be praying about that. We've got a lot of great things going on in that ministry. And also, just another thing is I'm super excited about the amount of people that we're having here in person, because the more we have able to show up, the quicker we can get away from karaoke Sundays and go back to just us singing. And I don't know about you guys, I love the songs that we're learning and having, kind of having that crutch of Keith Lancaster and his group, singing with us. But man, it'll be nice when we can relearn how to sing again, right? Amen. And the reason, just so we know, because we like, talk about the reasons we do stuff. The reason we do that is when we're all online and we're singing, it sounds terrible when you just have one voice. Not that, Griff isn't a great singer, or, Scott Adair, who's done our singing before, or Leslie, they're great singers, but when you're just one dude on a mic that's not produced or, with any kind of, overlay, blah, 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 all that audiovisual stuff, it just sounds bad. And one thing about a cappella singing is the best advertisement for a cappella singing is good a cappella singing. The worst advertising for a cappella singing is bad a cappella singing. So, just so that we have a good product and that we're putting out over for folks to watch and enjoy and to be lifted up and encouraged, that's the reason we have that, because that's what they're hearing. But man, it's going to be good when we can just us sing and really belt it out. So we're getting close. We're really close. I think that you just add, a couple more folks in here, and we'll get back to not me up here leading karaoke Sunday. So with that being said, if you're in Jeremiah, we're going to talk about that for just a second here. And it's really encouraging to me what Charlie shared with us this morning, because that goes right in line with what I want to talk about. And that is the forces that are at work against us in this world are more than we know, and are bigger and more powerful than we give it credit. And so one of the things that I've got on the order of worship, the title of the sermon this morning is Too Big to Fail. And so I'm going to kind of go away from that just a little bit, and because we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this morning I really want to talk about the idea of what we're up against, the reality of what we are a part of. And it's this sermon this morning, or this what I want to talk about is not meant to be something that's scary or alarming, but something that's informative and will inspire us to get ever closer to God, because at the end of the day, that's all that's going to help us. Getting closer to God, having a deeper and more meaningful and more life-enveloping relationship with God is our only hope against the very evil that Charlie shared with us this morning. And the fact that we are not experiencing what that young lady has experienced, the fact that we're not dealing with those very same evils, and those very same problems, that doesn't mean that we are not at war with spiritual forces. It might just mean that the war is over and we might have lost. Just think about that for a second. Just think about the spiritual warfare that's at work in the world. And we see it in the lives of that young lady there and others that we would, that we could bring up. But why does that kind of stuff happen to her and maybe not to us? Why do bad things seem to go on in bunches in some places and to some people, but others live relatively comfortably? I'm afraid the answer is one that we don't like. Think about what God said at the beginning of Job, the diary of a persecuted, oppressed, and hurt individual. At the very beginning of that whole saga, you've got God there with the angels, and Satan appears. The evil one comes before God, and God says this: "Have you ever considered my servant Job?" And Satan, well, no, not really, but I will. And he does, and we know that, you might be familiar with the story. All of this bad stuff starts happening to Job. And I wonder sometimes, would God say that about me? Would God say that about any of his kingdom citizens today? Have you ever considered my servant Randy? Have you ever considered my servant Eric? Or all of the, because God is placing Job square in the crosshairs of the evil one, because A, he knows he can handle it, and because Job is just that close to God. Job is just that dependent on God, just that much enveloped in his relationship with God. So the question is, are we even worthy of being targeted? Are we worth the time to come after, or are we self-subdued spiritually? That's a tough question to answer. And I'm sorry that if what we want in our worship service is simply to be encouraged and complimented on what we already know and do, because I'm afraid that if we just keep doing that, the church becomes largely ineffective. Because Ephesians tells us that there's a battle going on. I mean, I think it's like 11 times in Ephesians chapter 6, the Bible tells us that we are against something and something is against us. That's the part where he's telling us to put on the full armor of God. Because we are against something, something is against us, and what we're about to learn is that it's way more powerful than what we've ever thought or considered. Oh, here they are. Whew. Thought I lost those. Jeremiah chapter 12, starting in verse 1. You are always righteous, O Lord. That's a very good way to start. If you're ever going to say anything to God, that's a good way to start. You're always righteous, O Lord. When I bring my case before you, yet I would speak with you about your justice. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? One thing that we have to understand is that we don't understand. That's what he's saying right here. That's what Jeremiah, in his complaint, he's saying, God, you're always righteous, but I don't understand what's going on here. I don't understand. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why does all the faithless live at ease? You've planted them and they have taken root. They grow and bear fruit. You are always on their lips, but far from their hearts. Yet you know me, O Lord. You see me and test my thoughts about you. Drag them off like sheep to be butchered. Set them apart for the day of slaughter. How long will the land lie parched and the grass in every field be withered? Because those who live in it are wicked. The animals and birds have perished. Moreover, the people are saying, he will not see what happens to us. So Jeremiah is asking these questions, and he's saying, look, why are all these good things happening to bad people and bad things happening to good people? Why do things not seem fair? And isn't that a question that I feel like that you hear a lot now? Why are things so unfair? Why are things the way that they are for one and not the way that they are for another? Why are the things the way they are over here but they're not over there? Why are certain people prosperous and certain people aren't? Why is the world the way that it is? And I love God's response. He says, if you have raced with men on foot and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses? I love that response. I absolutely love that response because what God is doing, he's saying, Jeremiah, you're trying to figure stuff out that you have no idea what you're dealing with. You're trying to step into an arena that you are completely and totally overmatched in. That's what he's telling him. He said, look, you have such a hard time dealing with people. Why in the world would you try to figure out spiritual things? Because that's what we're up against. The spiritual reality that we are involved in is, if us trying to deal with that on our own is like us running a race against horses. It's like us trying to compete with a species that is completely and totally physically superior in every way. It says, what makes you think you can race against horses? There are forces stronger than anything we have ever encountered before at work in this world. You want an example of that? Turn over to Daniel chapter 10. Daniel chapter 10, we have an episode in the life of Daniel that is, quite frankly, alarming. So Daniel has, in the third year, verse 1, the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel. Its message was true, and it concerned a great war, and the understanding of the message came to him in a vision. And at that time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. Remember that for later. I ate no choice foods, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. On the 24th day of the first month, now this is a long reading, so stay with me. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen with a belt of the finest gold around his waist. His body was like chrysolite, and his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, and his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision, and the men with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at the great vision, and I had no strength left, and my face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking, and as I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep, and my face to the ground. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and my knees. And he said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I am about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. Then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. So Daniel gets a vision, or he has a dream, he gets a vision, and it's of this great war, and we don't really know what the great war is all about from this passage, but it troubles him, and so he calls out to God to help him to understand what's going on, and it's 3 weeks later, and he's been fasting and he's been praying and he's been, just submitting himself before God. And then finally, 3 weeks later, help arrives in the form of an angel, in the form of the angel of the Lord, in the form of some theophany that takes place. And he says, while he was saying this, I bowed with my face towards the ground and was speechless. Then one who looked like a man touched my lips, and I opened my mouth, and he began to speak. And he said, and I said to him, the one standing before me, I'm overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and because of this vision, my Lord, and I am helpless. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe. He said again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. Do not be afraid, O man, highly esteemed. He said, peace, be strong now. Be strong. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength. You see, one of the things, the part I wanted to get to before that, I skipped over. It said, then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel, verse 12. Since the first day that you set your mind of understanding and humble before God, I was sent to, I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Do you hear what's happening there? I got furrowed brows over here. I got some over there. There's an angel coming to help Daniel. But he was detained for 3 weeks by some other spiritual force, the prince of Persia. Some kind of spiritual battles going on. Daniel is distressed. He's calling out for help. Help is sent. And Satan and his forces and all of that detain the help. And then God sends Michael, the archangel, down to give him a whooping and send the help on to Daniel. What? I mean, yeah, that's what's going on here. That's what, and we have the nerve to think that we can do or say or move in those realms at all. God is saying, Shane, you have no idea what you're up against. He's saying, Shane, you don't understand all of the unseen world that's going on around you at any given time. And so what are you doing out there on your own racing against horses? And isn't that what we do when we try to wrap our mind and our intellect and our abilities and our self around this great God that we serve? I mean, what's going on in this world is beyond our comprehension and is beyond our ability to fight. It's beyond our ability to resist. It's beyond our ability to overcome. And so at this point in history, it would behoove us to abandon whatever earthly, physical, human plan that we have and simply try every single day, every minute of every day, to get closer and closer and more dependent on God. That's our goal. That's our desire, because I don't know about you guys, but after reading through Jeremiah and reading through Daniel, that kind of stuff scares the liver out of me. Because I'm up against things that not only am I less powerful than, but I don't even understand at all. And what happens is, as soon as we make a declaration or a commitment to get closer to God, to be dependent on God, the attacks are ramped up. Because the reality is that the world is no friend of grace. When you make the great confession, when you put Christ on in baptism, when you walk an aisle or confess Christ, that's when the war really starts. Look at Matthew chapter 4 and Luke chapter 4. We have the temptations of Jesus. We have Jesus living his life as not very much understood. We see that from his parents when he stays back and they're like, "Where are you at?" "I'm about my Father's business." So they really didn't understand what he was all about. But certainly when it comes to his ministry at 30 years old, when he's baptized and he starts his ministry, in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, we have illustrations of him going into the wilderness and he's fasting for 40 days, and there he's tempted by the evil one. Because as soon as we make a declaration, as soon as we give our lives to God and put Christ on in baptism, that's when we become a threat to the spiritual forces. That's when his threat to Satan and sin was truly demonstrated. And so Satan comes after him in a very profound way. And so I could sit here and talk about, well, how does Jesus fight him off? And obviously with Scripture and with prayer and all of that. But the point I want us to see here is that when we step outside of the world and we step into the grace of God, that's when the fight really starts. The world is not a friend to grace. It's not a friend to the grace that God gives to us, and it certainly isn't a friend to the grace that we project onto others, that we are a conduit of God's grace, and as we give that to others and we show that to others and we display that in our lives, and it's largely taken advantage of, and it's largely not returned with the same effort or with the same grace that we give it, and so over and over we're disappointed and attacked in that life that we're trying to live. And so what happens is that as we try to live that grace that we've stepped into, and we try to offer that grace to the world, and what happens when it comes back to us, and if we're mocked or if it's taken advantage of or whatever happens in a negative way, then we slowly but surely over time kind of dial that grace back, and we get numb to giving it out. We get numb to living it because, what's the point? We should hear God's voice. You're running against horses. Don't run against horses. Depend on me. Trust me. Focus on me. Don't focus on what's coming back to you. Focus on what I'm giving you. The world is not a friend to grace, and some things cannot be done quickly or efficiently. The problem with getting closer to God, the problem with deepening our relationship with God, is that it's not quick and it's not efficient. See, efficiency, I believe, is the great plague of our time. We assume if something can be done, it can be done quickly and it can be done efficiently. We see Jesus fasted for 40 days. Daniel mourned and waited and fasted and prepared himself for what was happening in his life for 3 weeks. How many of us can spend that kind of time dealing with a single issue, with a spiritual issue? How many times have we known of something going on and we're asked to pray about it, and we do? We pray about it. But are we praying about it? Charlie gave us a challenge this morning. How many of us are going to write that name down? How many already did? How many didn't? How many are going to have the nerve to now that I've put that re-challenge out there, to go to Charlie and say, hey, what was her name again? Can I have that name? Can I write that down? Because I'm going to pray about it today, and then I'm going to pray about it tonight, and then I'm going to pray about it tomorrow, and I'm going to pray on Tuesday, and I'm going to keep praying every day. I'm going to take that little girl's name before the King of Kings on an hourly basis every day until you tell me that it's okay not to. Oh, and by the way, did I mention, Charlie, I'm going to pray and I'm going to fast. I'm going to fast about this week. I'm going to fast over this young lady and her her spiritual state, this week and next week. And until we get an answer, I'm not going to stop. And that could be 40 days and 40 nights. That could be 3 weeks of mourning and fasting. or it could be the rest of your natural life. Are we willing to put that much effort into this spiritual life? Are we will? Because see, that's snuggling up next to God. That's not out here on our own, playing the part. Because that's what Jeremiah said. He goes, people's lips are saying your name, but their hearts aren't necessarily. See, I don't believe that interest in the gospel is the problem in the world today. I believe that sustained attention to the gospel is the issue. It isn't a desire to have the gospel apply to my life. I mean, we all want that, right? We all want the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, to be a reality for us. We all want that because that's the forgiveness of sin and making me okay with God. That's really our main concern. But what the gospel is really about isn't just God taking care of my sin problem. It's God taking care of my heart issue. And as Jeremiah says, taking my heart of stone and turning it into a heart of flesh. It's about being transformed so that the only thing that matters in my life is getting real close to God, being so overwhelmed by a relationship with God that I am unrecognizable anymore, and all that people see when they see me is Jesus. All that they hear when they hear me is Jesus. And it isn't a desire to have the gospel apply to me. It is a desire to have sustained attention to the reality of the good news of Jesus Christ. It's that sustained, daily, minute by minute reality that God is the definition of my life. God is not part of the picture. He is the picture. God is not part of my life. God is my life. For that to happen, we are no longer church members. We're disciples. A disciple is someone who spends their life as an apprentice to their master. And I'm afraid that the words matter and that we've become so comfortable being members of a congregation that we've forgotten the reality of being a disciple of Christ. And as disciples, we are continually in the presence of our master. We are continually being apprenticed by our master. We're not tourists. We're pilgrims. People who spend their entire lives on a journey, going somewhere else, going somewhere special and sacred. You see, creating a great and comfortable life here is all about racing other people. But creating or allowing a life to be created on our behalf by God, being transformed, well, that's racing horses. And for that, we have to be completely consumed and enveloped by God. Because what Jesus would tell us in the Sermon on the Mount is that, hey, you can build up this life all you want. You can have all the comforts, all the creature comforts, all the money, all the retirement plans, all that kind of stuff, and it is meaningless. Because there's going to come a time when it's going to start to rain, when it's going to start to storm, and those horses are going to run right through that house. He said, if we are controlled, enveloped, consumed by God, that's the only way we stand a chance. So this morning, the question is, why should I go deeper in my relationship with God? Because there's forces at work, even today in this country, beyond our ability to withstand. And if competing with people wears us out, like I said, we stand no chance against those forces of evil. No chance whatsoever. So how sustained will our relationship with God be this week? How much effort will we put into paying attention and focusing on our relationship with God, allowing that to transform us into the living sacrifices that He's calling us to be? We're going to sing a song. I don't have my order of worship. Yes, I do. That was a giant lie. Footprints of Jesus. We're going to sing this song. We're going to stand. We're going to sing the song Footprints of Jesus. And as we sing this song, I want to ask our minds to be asking ourselves this question: am I willing to follow in those footprints of Jesus? And if we're willing to, that's a great start. But the problem is that without God, we are not able to. And no matter what we call it, no matter what words we put around it, if we are not completely consumed with our relationship with God, we're not even able. As willing as we might be, we're not able. Would you stand with me as we sing?